episode. It's going to be every Friday. It's going to be in the afternoon. It's called Trade the Chain, and we're going to come around. We're going to talk about market and Bitcoin crypto analysis, what's going on, what's happened during the week, and just how price actions and market movements are affecting everybody. Definitely want to introduce, I got Ryan Gorman, Monty and CJ, and Monty and CJ are with Market Rebellion, and they head up their crypto team over there. So really excited to be bringing you this. I just want to kind of start this off. It's the first episode, so we're going to practice a little and hopefully refine this as it goes on. But the first thing we're going to do, the first segment of the show, is going to be an overview of markets and Bitcoin. And we're going to dive into some technical analysis, and that's why we have the market rebels here, because that's what they do best, and kind of give commentary on where the winds are blowing with Bitcoin as well as the traditional market. So thank you all for coming. And CJ, Monty, Ryan, this is going to be fun. CJ, Monty, why don't we just dive into, what the overall market conditions are looking like, and then maybe run into some technicals, and particularly in Bitcoin.
Yeah, sure thing, Alex. Happy Friday. Thanks for having us on. And it's looking like a good start to the Friday. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick here. And Bitcoin's off to a great start today, which is great. And I want to start by taking us all the way back to July 23rd. And I think a lot of this growth in Bitcoin, this huge spike that we saw back here in whenever this was, it was very significant, and it was due to a large increase in capital of altcoins. So we saw that altcoin mania kind of come out of nowhere. And if we look at like Voyager token here, for example, on July 23rd, we saw this massive spike, right? So this is where all this altcoin volume kind of started, and it kind of carried through to here.
GX has had quite the run over the course of the last 2 weeks. Is that part of this pattern, by the way? I know Steve Ehrlich's happy. I know you guys are happy.
Yeah, I think it is part of the pattern, because if we look at Litecoin here as well, I'm not going to really talk about Ethereum as an altcoin. I think it's kind of in a league of its own at this point. But also, same day, July 23rd, we saw this big spike in volume and price. And then, sure enough, 3 days later, I feel like this is kind of a known fact at this point, but 3 days later, we see this spike in Bitcoin. So this is July 23rd. This is July 26th. So this is the day when we saw all that spike in altcoin volume. And this is the day where we saw all that spike in Bitcoin volume.
Do you think
that carried us way out?
What do you think was behind that spike in altcoin volume? Because it seems like it was across the board. Was there any main catalyst there?
Yeah, that's what I'm not too sure about, right? And it kind of reminds, CJ and I were actually talking a lot about how it reminded us of the 2017 altcoin mania, and like it just seemed like there were a lot of good money making opportunities. And although there's a lot of Bitcoin maximalists that will kind of foo-foo these altcoins, I mean, there are still great money making opportunities, and there are tokens with validity out there. So I think people kind of started to see these money making opportunities as more valid exchanges popped up, and yeah, people just started to invest in altcoins. And
is this going to be? Are you looking at a short run here? Or are you looking at something that's going to have a steady increase as it goes into Q4?
Well, so the reason I wanted to touch on this first is because after this, then we obviously had the massive DeFi spike as well. So if you look at Maker, that all happened on August 11th. So just a few days ago, right here is where we saw that massive spike. And the same with Link and Comp. So we saw that massive spike in volume and price. And that was on August 11th. And sure enough, 3 days later, it starts to pull back. And then we look at Bitcoin, and Bitcoin starts to perform well again. So I think what's happening here is I think So here's the day that the DeFi was spiking. Bitcoin price dropped staunchly, but then once that kind of wave of hype ends, we see Bitcoin start to reverse. So I think as some of that DeFi capital starts to come back to Bitcoin, I think that could be very bullish this weekend and may even carry us up to, depending on what the Asian markets make of all this, I think we could reach 12.5 by tomorrow. So
one thing I'll add just at the end of that is that the capital in the space that you mentioned, the overall market cap did reach a new high like during this spike that you're talking about. So to me, what that shows is that because of the hype, because of the money to be made in DeFi, I think people are jumping into the space collectively, and that gradually carries off into Bitcoin, ETH, if you want to call that like a blue chip crypto, and then of course some of the more exotic coins.
Do you think that these higher highs and higher lows are indicative of a more prolonged rally, a rally that has bigger legs than, say, going to 12.5 and then retracing once traders start to profit take over the weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go into that too. But
are we looking at it? Are we looking to hit like a safe resistance level, like a 14,000 level, before everybody can sigh?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm always looking for higher highs. That's a very important indication of the fact that we have real momentum going into the space, actual confidence to drive this thing to new highs above 20,000. Yeah, I'd like to get into the charts a little bit more as opposed to just preaching.
I saw a stock to flow tab on there, Monty.
Oh yeah,
I'm a little worried. I know how the group is all scared of stock to flow.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just start with the weekly chart here, being from that macro perspective you were talking about. So yeah, beautiful bottom here, higher low, another higher low here, and looking like we have a potential to create another one here, and one as well after our pullback. Now, in terms of making a run at 14K and really challenging this previous high, since we're on a green sequential 4 on the weekly chart, like that's very good. That's a bullish indication that, positive momentum will continue to carry through. But what I want to see is that, there are 2 days left in the week before this candle closes. And when this candle closes, I think it's very important that it closes above the previous candle body of 14K, because what that shows is that the bulls have strength to actually close something above the previous candle high, which can realistically make a run at 14K and, challenge that. So that's what I see from the weekly charts. And from a more macro perspective, I am bullish because the trend has been bullish. And I mean, just as a general principle of trading, looking back at some of the most successful traders like Jesse Livermore, like Paul Tudor Jones, Richard Dennis, all of these guys have a tendency to embrace a trend following type strategy. And the trend right now for Bitcoin in the cryptocurrency market is collectively bullish. And so I'm going to trade with a slight bullish bias. Now, right here on the daily term, more interim timeframes, sequential, we're on a red one and between a green one. It's not telling you all that much. Obviously we peaked back here on the 9, but right now, while we were bullish this morning, we're kind of in this no trade zone between 12K and, our previous 9 at approximately 11,000. So what I'm looking for is kind of similar to the same thing on the weekly chart. I'm looking for a close above our previous high and something that can break out with sufficient momentum to the upside out of this box. It's kind of how Ethereum was challenging resistance at 400, and then finally it broke 400 and went immediately to like 450. This is I see this being a similar level of resistance at 12K for Bitcoin. If it breaks, I see it going and retesting all-time highs or not all-time highs, but recent highs at 14K.
Speaking of Ethereum, that's up what, over 12% over the past 24 hours?
Yeah, let's check out some of the alts. So when I'm talking about trend following, what I mean is like, you know, what is irrationally high usually goes higher. You know, I talked to wealth managers who told me that they didn't want to buy Amazon at $1,000 because it was too expensive. Now it's $3,000. I mean, the trend can keep going up. And in crypto, you know, that's pretty much why the term HODL was created, because you never really know how high these things were going to go. But in an interim time frame, we have a green 2 above a green 1 on a daily term. That's a buy signal according to the sequential indicator. And the next levels of resistance that we have are 450. Like I said, we kind of consolidated under 400 here for a while and then broke above it. And I think if we break above our next level of resistance here at 450, there really isn't anything stopping us from going to 475 and 500.
Oh,
So,
Wow.
you know, these breakouts occur very quickly and irrationally. They don't make sense. And that's just kind of the way it is. You know, we shouldn't try to understand them.
And you know, one of the things with on the Bitcoin charts, I mean, same question as you know, with the altcoins. Are we looking for a steady climb upwards? You know, I don't think there's any chance of a parabolic run. Or are we looking for a mixed market? I mean, we were sideways for a long time, CJ. You know, life got a little boring on Bitcoin land. What are your short-term sentiments? Let's go out, you know, 14, 30 days. What are we looking at Bitcoin?
I mean, here, let me go to Bitcoin real quick. So we're in this consolidation kind of no trade zone really, where we could either go, you know, retest our previous, you know, moving average at approximately, you know, 10,100 here if we break below our previous 9 here. But what I'm looking for is a breakout above here. I would give it, since we're in a bull market and since this is kind of a neutral technical formation, I'll give it like a 55% chance of breaking to the upside. But that's not like, I don't have enough conviction to place a long trade based on that. I'm bullish from a macro perspective, but you know, from like tomorrow or next week, you know, as long as the trend remains neutral, like I'm just gonna look for a breakout above here. And once we break out, like I'm gonna look for a bullish retest of 14K.
All right, very cool. Well, you know, moving on, let's hit some of the hot topics of the week, some of the tickers that have been making noise. One is Link. You know, Link has really seemed to be the unstoppable moving up coin. I mean, people are just talking about it. I'd be curious on what Twitter metrics there are on Link as far as search terms or mentions. We did have a you know, one big news. It dethroned Bitcoin Cash for number 5 on CoinMarketCap's list for.
News. Did you see the Portnoy video?
Oh,
He bought Link.
Winklevoss thing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Winklevoss thing. But yeah, Portnoy is a Link Marine now, evidently.
Yeah, he put, you know, this just goes to show the hype or demand, whatever you want to call it, behind Link, right? It's so the episode that CJ's referring to is, you know, Portnoy got the Winklevoss. Actually, I think the Winklevoss twins hit him out on Twitter, right? So they came over to his house, first time buying Bitcoin. Talked about a bunch of other stuff like Elon Musk's gold in the asteroids and stuff like that. And then proceeded to show him how to purchase crypto on the Gemini platform. So he took $250,000 to start, which is a big number, no matter how much money you have. And he used 50,000 of that to buy Link. Am I right, CJ?
Yeah, I believe it was, I'm not 100% sure. I think it was 200 grand in Bitcoin and then 50 in Link. I think he said he has over $1 million now though. I mean, I can't keep up with it, so.
this is crazy. But now we've had, you know, I've seen people on Twitter talking about $1,500 by the end of the year, this and that. I mean, it wasn't that long ago in life that it was at $1.50. But you know, today we have a pullback of a little over 5% now. What are your thoughts on Link? Where is this thing going? I mean, is it just going to keep shooting up and mooning, or are we going to, you know, our next ticker is going to show the opposite of what happens when things go bad. But with Link, where do you think we're going with this, Monty and CJ?
Yeah, it's tough to say because like all the other factors involved, like the things you guys just talked about with Portnoy and hyping all these coins up, it's really tough to estimate where these coins are headed when there's all this hype that's not so much based in the technology, but it's just this kind of army of followers that are following Dave Portnoy. And I mean, they've been pumping the stock market for the last 6 months themselves. So, I mean, who knows how high they could take this thing. But I think in terms of actual validity, I don't see the coin itself breaking $50 anytime soon. I think that following could bring it up that high, and I think it could potentially get pumped that high. But I think beyond that, I think the utility of the coin itself is kind of limited to somewhere around that point, and I think that's as high as they'll be able to pump it. And from there, I think we may see a big correction.
How far down do you think it's correct? Like, just if you had to guess.
What was that?
How far down do you think it would correct if you had to guess?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I could see it correcting by as much as half. I don't know if I mean, it's hard to predict where this coin will be this time next year when all the kind of hype has passed and died down. But I think it could correct as much as 50% after all this pumping that's going on. And yeah, I could see the coin leveling off around like $25, which I never thought it would make it to 16. So
yeah,
fair. So Alex mentioned the opposite of Link. Tell us a little bit about what happened with Yam this week and what that ultimate resolution was.
Oh, and also, I mean, Ryan, $460 million this thing reached, okay, in 20 hours. And it took a little shorter period of time for this thing to fall to zero. I mean, DeFi at its worst. Definitely tell us what your thoughts are on that. And also give us some ramifications of that, man, just for the everyday person who jumped into that. Yeah. Ryan, you don't own any EM, right?
No. Act, and thank God for that.
Yeah, guys, what went on?
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, we've had these incidents in crypto before where it went down 99% in one day. Very similar to what happened with the DAO in 2016, where we had a security vulnerability, but the founder came out, announced that he had made a critical error, and subsequently we had that 99%, it went to zero. So very reminiscent of the DAO. One thing people made money on the way up. However, I mean, obviously they didn't make money on the way down, but the ramifications of this, you know, it's cool because it gets hype and it brings people into the space, but you don't really want them leaving with a sour taste in their mouth. It's kind of like what Steve Ehrlich talked about in the brokerage industry. You know, you want a customer to be successful and to remain. And so when you push people out of the space with experimental progress, with experimental things like that, you know, it can be harmful. And so, you know, if you want to take a shot, you know, these things do sometimes make money, but, you know, it's very experimental and you should never risk more than you're willing to lose.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't help with like the governing body's perception of crypto at all. So, I mean, it's kind of a major black eye where it's like they feel responsibility to protect investors and they don't want assets existing that can go to zero overnight. Like that's just, yeah. And I mean, the SEC is looking for any excuse to kind of keep Bitcoin from gaining popularity or for crypto from gaining popularity. So yeah, I think that's kind of a black eye on crypto in general.
I mean, so critics of the SEC's handling of crypto could rightly point out that oil not only went to zero overnight, it actually went negative.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so much you can do in a traditional market or a digital market as a regulator.
I'm not gonna lie. I called up John that day, and actually I had a buddy of mine on the phone conference then. I said, "Hey man, with this oil stuff, we don't actually owe money if we were in it, do we?" That was just a freak incident. That was such a learning experience. I loved it. All right, cool. The last thing I want to touch on that I think is big for the traders out there is this BitMex news coming out on how they're now going to require the KYC of all their traders, right? So what's been the big thing with BitMex? It's kind of been the Wild West, a ton of leverage. Perpetual swaps, just people printing money when they're having great days or getting wrecked when they're having bad days. But to be honest, I think, the majority of those users came via VPN from markets like the US and stuff. So now they're going to be requiring KYC. What are the ramifications of that platform going to be? What are we thinking? I mean, it's one of the most popular crypto exchanges out there.
Yeah, the ramifications are going to be huge. There's no doubt about it. Like you said, I think a majority of, or close to a majority of the users on that exchange are using VPN. So, I mean, that's going to be a significant slump in volume following these regulations. Obviously, there's going to be no more US citizens trading on that platform. And yeah, BitMex was kind of one in a kind in the sense that, I mean, they offered futures, the possibility to short. What I'm hoping is that, I mean, there are some close alternatives, nothing that offers 100 times leverage or anything like that. But like, I know Kraken's getting a little better, but that's still not even close to the same thing. But I'm hoping that there are US alternatives that will eventually pop up that can kind of compete with BitMex. And I hope this actually could be a catalyst for a better change so we can stop using VPNs and stop worrying about our accounts getting locked out randomly and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a grace period of 6 months that they've put on this for I guess the changeover. But CJ, when it comes to crypto funds that are US based, where this is a major part of their strategy, what is this gonna? They're gonna have to do some pivoting.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit before the show. I mean, just by the nature of using a VPN, like we can't know for certain how many users on BitMex are actually in the US or are using VPNs. Maybe it's like 40. I mean, we'll find out soon. But BitMex, whether you like it or not, has an incredible amount of influence over the market. And I would argue that during March 12th, when we had the crash of 40% in Bitcoin and 50% in Ethereum, there were record amounts of liquidations because of flash crashes, specifically on BitMex, with massive sell walls and stop orders getting hit. And so, anything that can take a little bit of like Wild West, influence away from BitMex, I think is going to be a more healthier thing for the space in general, because 100x, I mean, you're pretty much in a casino at that point. Leverage, at least.
No, absolutely. Ryan, what's your take on just from an optics standpoint? Do you think this exchange is going to have to retool itself now that it's cutting out a fair share of its market? If what we all are assuming is true, that the majority of the users or a lot of the users come from the US?
I mean, not necessarily, right? Positioning yourself as wanting to work within existing regulatory frameworks and be compliant, I think, is better than some of the other statements that have been put out there in the past by Arthur Hayes. But ultimately, I think a lot of those US-based clients are probably institutional anyway, and they have offshore feeders, so they'll still be able to access the exchange in some way. Sure, volumes may initially dip, but people and institutions will always find a way to trade what they want to trade where they want to trade it. So
that is forever true.
any be permanent, if anything, or significantly permanent.
All right, well, cool. Guys, everybody, thank you for joining us. That was Trade the Chain. This is our first episode. Promise we're going to get better as this goes along, okay? I saw some Air Jordan sneaker tab open on Matt Monty's computer, so we know what he's doing this afternoon. But thank you guys for joining. This is Trade the Chain every Friday afternoon. You know, market analysis, technical analysis of Bitcoin, ETH, what the hot stories are. And we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot, folks.
Thank you.